Hey everybody, Nikki the Death Doula here. I wanted to do a special rewind episode this week. I have been actually wanting to do this for a while, and I just have had so much content. I've had so many great episodes and interviews to share with you all, but I have recently discovered an uptick in my listeners, and I wanted to go ahead and take this opportunity to repost my most popular episode and my personal favorite as well. It's got some of the best advice that you can give to literally anybody because we're all going to experience loss at some point. But for all my new listeners, hi, welcome. I hope you're enjoying my podcast. And I know a lot of you came over from the Risk podcast. I got a nice shout out there. So a huge thank you to the Risk podcast. Although, disclosure, did give them a nice little donation. So but also, please check out the Risk podcast. It's Risk with Kevin Allison. I was on that show back in 2019, telling a story about when my brother passed away. And it's a phenomenal podcast. It can be a little risque at times, so just keep that in mind. But it's my favorite podcast. It's the podcast I've been listening to the longest. So please go check out Risk with Kevin Allison. Also, just couple quick housekeeping things before I dive in. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. I don't think I mentioned that in this episode because I don't know that I had the Patreon at that point. So if I did, you're hearing this twice. But go to patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. You get grief affirmations twice a week, early access to my podcast, ad-free, and all sorts of other bonus content. I'd like to start doing some Q&As when I get some more support over there. And as you probably know by now, I quit my day job to pursue my work as a doula full-time and a bereavement specialist. And right now I'm not really making much of any money at all. So your support would be huge for me and I really appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to stop blah-blahing and let you get on to this episode. So here is what to say and what not to say to someone who is grieving. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Hello, and welcome to Good Grief, a podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you so much for tuning in. So today, we are going to talk about what to say and what not to say to somebody who is grieving. I read this beautiful article in the New York Times. Now, this is from a couple years ago. It's from February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2019. And I will link the article in the show notes if I can. But if you just Google search what to say and what not to say to someone who's grieving, New York Times, I'm sure it'll come right up. So it's a great article. I totally recommend you reading it. But we're just going to kind of touch on the highlights and the big takeaways with this. They had 4 rules, quote unquote rules. And we'll go through those and I'll discuss things you might be tempted to say and what you can say instead, what you can offer up. They definitely spell out some beautiful things in this article as well. So please read that if you get a second. So rule number 1 is it's not about you. And that cannot be said enough. If someone is grieving, that's just it. They're grieving. So this has nothing to do with you. And a phrase that I hear a lot surrounding grief and things that we're tempted to say and that I have been tempted to say as well is, I know how you feel, right? When somebody has suffered a loss, specifically if it's like, for example, if they just lost their mother and maybe you lost your mother, prior to that, it would be so easy for you to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know just how you feel. The thing is, you don't know how they feel. Everybody's grief is completely different and everybody's relationships are different too. So their relationship with their mother is not going to be the same as your relationship with your mother. So you don't know how they feel and the circumstances surrounding the death. And even if it's not death related, if it's loss related, if somebody's house burns down and they're going through the grief of losing all of their belongings and, perhaps a pet or, maybe somebody, was still in the house and God forbid you had a garage fire years prior. These circumstances are all very different. So you can't know how somebody's going to feel. And also when you say something like that, you're inadvertently bringing the conversation back to you and your grief. And this conversation needs to be about them and their grief. So just remember that you're there for them and show them that by listening, telling them you're so sorry for their loss. Would you like to talk about it? If you would like to talk, I've suffered losses too. They're different than yours, but I'd be more than willing to listen. Would you like to tell me a story about your mother? Things like that. So it's not about you. It's about them. Don't interject your own anecdotes about other losses you may have suffered. Just be there for them and just listen to them. Rule number 2, there's no bright side. This one's a little sticky. There is no bright side to loss, right? The word itself means you have something and you don't have it anymore. And if you're grieving it, that means it was a bad loss, It's not like losing weight or, losing your keys, although that can be a grief too. But there's no bright side to this. And don't try to make a bright side to this. It hurts me so much when I hear people say things like, this was God's will, everything happens for a reason. And I recognize that these things are coming from a place of heart. They're well-meaning, right? You're trying to make them feel better. You're trying to take away their pain, right? Saying, well, it was God's will. It's out of our hands. God handles this. Everything happens for a reason. To me, if somebody were to say that to me when my brother passed away, my response would be, what kind of God would take my brother when he was only 40 years old and had 2 kids left behind? Or, heaven forbid somebody loses a baby. I've known people who've had late-term miscarriages or lost infant children to SIDS. What kind of God would want to kill a baby? That's just how I would respond. And I feel like a lot of other people might respond that way too. Possibly not. But I would just avoid trying to make things light or saying there's no need to grieve because we can't help it. Oh, well, don't try to make a bright side to this because there isn't one. This person hurts. They're grieving. Recognize that you see they're in a dark place and that's where they're going to be, and that you will happily join them in their dark place if that is your choice. Let me come down to your level. Let me be sad with you. Let me just be present with you, right? So don't try to make a bright side. Don't try to explain it away. So rule number 3, this kind of reads into that. Be careful with religion, right? And I'm putting a parentheses on this. This was not in the article. I'm going to add on religion and cultural sensitivities and cultural purposes. Especially if this is somebody you're not super close with and maybe shares a different set of religious or spiritual beliefs and or has a different cultural set of norms and beliefs. So the whole, it was God's will, or, there's another angel in heaven right now. That might be highly offensive to this person. It might mean a lot to you. If somebody were to say that to you, maybe that would be the most beautiful thing somebody could say. But unless you really know that person and know that that's what they would want to hear, don't say that. And don't assume that either. Maybe it's somebody you have been in church with since, you were infants and you've grown up in the church together into adulthood, and they have the strongest, most beautiful faith. But if they're suffering a sudden and traumatic loss, their faith might be shaken a little. They might be questioning their faith. Let them. Don't insult them. Don't make them feel bad about it. Let them grieve how they need to grieve. So just be super careful with religion. And then throwing my little caveat in there about culture as well. If you're talking to somebody who has a different cultural upbringing or different cultural beliefs, they may have a different concept of what death means, and they may have a different concept of, what's happening to their loved one who has passed away. They might feel it as a celebration, that their spirit has moved on to something better. And that might not be something you believe, or even vice versa. If if you have not really any religious, spiritual beliefs, you're an atheist, and you're talking to somebody who is a super, super devout Catholic or Christian, they might believe strongly that maybe they do believe their person's in a better place and that it's a beautiful thing and they're with God. And you don't believe that. Don't crap on that. Let them believe that, because that's There's a whole rant we could all go on, right? About forcing people to believe things that they don't believe in, or pushing your beliefs on somebody else, or having them push their beliefs on you. It's a very tricky situation, and it can be an offensive enough conversation to somebody who's not open to it. But when there's grief surrounding that conversation, it only amplifies that. It just makes it so much harder, right? If somebody's not open to discussing religion and spiritual beliefs and cultural beliefs, when they're grieving, they're really not going to be open to discussing it. So just be careful with that and leave it out. If you know this person and you really feel strongly that, they might accept these phrases, go ahead. By all means, offer to pray with them. Offer to, not indulge, it's the wrong word. Offer to, do a ritual that they might practice with their culture and their belief system, if that's something you'd be willing to do. Just be very careful when it comes to religion and culture. Okay. Rule number 4, let them feel. So I've referenced this earlier, but the most important thing you can do for anybody who's suffering a loss is to just let them feel what they're going to feel, okay? Be there for them. The most important thing, if you take nothing else out of today's episode, take this one sentence from me. The most important thing you can say to somebody is nothing. Listen. Just listen to them. Let them feel what they're going to feel. Let them talk to you. Give them the space to express their grief and to talk about it if they are willing. If they're not, for the love of Pete, don't force it out of them. Let them have that space. Let them feel what they're going to feel. If they're going to be angry, let them be angry. The most horrible thing you can say to somebody is, oh, shh, calm down, don't be so angry. Let them feel it, right? You're basically invalidating their feelings, because you'll hear me say this probably in every single episode. Every feeling is normal, every reaction is normal, and your feelings are valid, okay? So if somebody's angry, let them be angry. If they're sad, let them be sad. If they're relieved, let them be relieved. Don't make them feel guilty about any of their feelings, and don't tell them or make them feel that any of their responses are wrong. Be there for them. So those were the only 4 things on their list, but I just have a few other things I'd like to throw out there. A lot of times it's instinctual for us to say, if you need anything, please let me know, right? And that's beautiful. That's a wonderful thing to say to somebody, but mean it. Don't say that, and then if they actually ask you for something, shy away from it. If you tell them, if you need anything, please let me know, mean that, and respond accordingly. Better than just saying, if you need anything, offer specific help to them. Everybody gives food, and food is great, food is necessary, but maybe they're going through a lot right now. They're sleeping a lot. They're depressed. Offer to mow their lawn for them. Offer to pick up their dry cleaning. Offer to take their kids for a day. If they have children in the house and they just need a day to be alone and sad, offer to take their kids to the zoo, And I have a whole episode on how to talk to children. So if you make that offer and their kids start talking to you about their grief, you'll be ready for that. But offer specific help. Don't leave it too open. I mean, you can leave it open-ended and let them fill in what they might need. But if you offer a specific thing, it might be easier for them to say, wow, yeah, I didn't even think of that. Thank you. I would love to have some help mowing my lawn or cleaning the gutters or whatever. But again, the most important thing you can say is nothing. Say, I'm sorry for your loss, and let them go from there. You don't have to respond because, again, rule 1, it's not about you. It's about them. Let them talk. Let them grieve. Let them be silent. Let them cry. Let them scream. If they're angry, offer to take them outside and scream at the moon. I tell you what, that is really fun, you guys. It's very cathartic to go out there and scream at the moon sometimes. So go for it. But just simply listening and being there for somebody is probably the most powerful thing you can ever offer them. So, sum up. Yes, I'm so sorry for your loss. Can I offer to take your children for the day? Can I offer to get you a manicure? Would you like me to mow your lawn? Would you like to talk about your loved one? No, I know how you feel. Well, it was God's will, and everything happens for a reason. Don't worry, you'll get over it in time. It was just their time to go, right? So these all seem pretty self-explanatory, but it's some of these phrases have been put in our heads for so long that they might come out, you know. Like I said, I've been tempted to say I know how you feel. I lost my brother, and when other people I know have lost their brother, I it's I'm tempted inside to say, "Oh, I know how you feel," because I lost my brother too, but I don't, because I don't know what their relationship was with their brother. And they don't know what my relationship was with my brother, because we're all different. So you may have suffered a similar loss, but you don't know how they feel. Okay, I've driven that one way too far into the ground. One other thing, though, suggesting to somebody to just stay busy and move on, to move on, that might sound like a nice thing to say or good advice, but it's really not, because we need to face our grief. We can't, spoiler alert, you're not going to get over it, right? You don't get over grief. Grief just it shapes who you are. It shapes who we are as people and how we interact with others in our lives after the loss, right? And it's like dealing with a disease by ignoring it. Not saying grief is a disease, but you know what I'm talking about. Or like alcoholism, which is also a disease. You can't just stay busy and distract yourself. You can't just do that. You have to face your grief. And telling somebody not to is doing them a great disservice. You're not going to move on, and you're not going to get over it. I swear to God, I had a therapist tell me to get over it once. Needless to say, she did not remain my therapist for very long. I hope she's nobody's therapist today, but that's neither here nor there. Let people grieve. Again, that was rule number 4, let them feel, right? I'm like reiterating a lot right now because we're at the end of the episode. But I hope you got something out of this, and I'll tell you what, if you have said any of these quote unquote no things, anything I said that you shouldn't say, don't beat yourself up over it or anything. Don't feel bad. Or if you are at a funeral or in passing with a coworker that you know just lost somebody and you utter something like, I know how you feel, or, just give it time. Don't smack yourself in the face. Say, oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry. Because then you're going back to rule 1 and making it about you. Just, step back, apologize. I'm sorry. And I'm very sorry for your loss. And then, again, offer them space to grieve if they would like to, offer specific help. Can I offer you one of my PTO days if you need an extra day? Can I offer to take a little bit of your workload away if it's a coworker? Things like that. So that's all I have for you today. I'm really glad you came in to check out this podcast, and I hope you got a little something out of this. Biggest thing, I'll say it 100 times, the best thing you could do to somebody is just be there for them. Just listen. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're all doing well. And please remember that grief doesn't always have to suck. It can be whatever the heck you want it to be. Good Grief was brought to you by me. You can find me online at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Today's episode was produced by me. Research and scripts written by me. Your host is me. Editing and sound design also me. Music is not me. Music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. License information can be found at filmmusic.io/standard-license. Special thank you to my best friend and husband for constantly reassuring me that I don't suck.